Welcome to this beautiful, totally real beach. I woke up here a couple of days ago and I've decided to name this beach the underrated anime beach. I'm workshopping a name, but I haven't had much time to think of one because I've just been watching some lesser known anime. And I'm going to tell you about them whether you want me to or not. If you've watched Next Topic Media's first ever video, you might remember that
I love anime!
Yeah, what I said. I think some of the coolest stories ever told are elevated by gorgeous animation that's not held back by trying to look as realistic as possible. Sometimes you can just tell that the animators poured their heart and soul into their work, and you get beautifully told stories that are as visually great as the stories itself. There are an infinite amount of stories that could be told in anime, and in live action too, but this video is about anime, so I'm gonna stay on track. People that watch a lot of anime have probably seen their fair share of smaller shows that deserve a spot in the limelight, but are overshadowed by the anime giants like Naruto, Dragon Ball, One Piece, etc. People that don't watch anime, or even people that have just seen the most popular ones, most likely don't even know that there is an insanely massive amount of shows, and some of them are severely underrated. And because I want some of these anime to get the credit they deserve, I'm going to give my top 5 underrated anime. Also, yes, I will eventually do a top 5 overrated anime, but I have to mentally prepare myself for the vicious onslaught of hate I'll receive because anime fans are mean. I'm always looking for new anime to watch, so if there's an underrated anime that you really love that I didn't mention, there's a pretty good chance that I haven't even seen it. So go ahead and drop it in the comments and I'll check it out, and who knows, maybe one day I'll make a part 2 to this video. Before I get into talking about the shows, I wanted to give my criteria for making this list. It's pretty loose, but I based it on how many ratings the show has on Crunchyroll, how often I hear it talked about, and how much I personally like it. So the order of the list isn't necessarily my personal ranking in order of how much I like them, but it's just a combination of those 3 things. And with all these, I'm going to leave out a lot of information because I don't want to spoil anything major, and I think that these anime are a lot better if you go in blind. Now let's talk about some anime. Briefly, I want to mention a show that's not popular, but it's also not going to make this list, and it's called Gamers. If you want a show that's really dumb, but also funny, then I recommend this. It's just about a guy who really, really likes video games, and he misreads every single situation he's in. Every other character also misreads every situation, so it's just a bunch of high schoolers who misinterpret every little thing. I'm not the biggest fan, but it honestly is really funny, so if you just want a straight comedy and nothing else, you should check it out. If you don't like it, don't blame me, blame Jacob, because he made me watch it. With all that being said, let's go ahead and get this started with number 5, Vivy, Fluorite Eyes song. I'm going to be calling this Vivy for short, but it's one of the more popular shows on the list. It's the second most popular with 9.1 thousand ratings, which really isn't a lot compared to most other Crunchyroll anime. Vivy follows Diva, also referred to as Vivy, who is the first created humanoid AI, and her sole purpose in life is to make people happy by singing. She works at a theme park called Nia Land, but since she was the first android, her popularity has diminished over time. But she still performs at the park every single day because it's really all she knows how to do. But one day she's approached by a program referred to as Matsumoto, and he asks for her help to destroy AIs, and she's understandably confused because she's just an android that sings. And she really doesn't want to help, but eventually she caves and helps him because obviously she has to, or there wouldn't be a show. One cool thing that really stands out to me about Vivy is that it takes place over the course of about 100 years, which you don't really get to see that often, and it's possible because Vivy's an android, so she doesn't age, but you do get to see some of the side characters age as the episodes go by, which was pretty cool to see. And I don't want to get too much farther into the story aspects to avoid spoiling, but it is worth mentioning that there are a lot of incredible fight scenes along with just really good storytelling overall. and the animation is absolutely stunning. And based off what I'm showing right now is all the proof that I need to show that it's worth a watch from the animation alone. It's probably the best looking show on this list, but it is really close with my number 4, which is Takt Op Destiny. This is the most popular show on the list, and it's my personal favorite too. It has more than double the ratings as Vivy, which is one of the reasons it's not higher on this list. I randomly stumbled across this show one night, and it was while it was still coming out, and I watched each episode right after it came out because it was just so good. The story was engaging, and I loved the characters, and the picture they had for the show looked really cool, so I knew I wanted to check it out. This show follows Takt, who loves music and spends a lot of his time playing a piano in his house. He lives with sisters Anna and Cosette Schneider. They're not related to him, but they are sisters. They live in this dystopian world where music has been completely outlawed because of an alien invasion, but certain humans have gained the powers to fight back against the aliens by using music. The men are called conductors and the women are called music arts. You would never believe this twist, but Takt actually ends up becoming a conductor, and I don't want to spoil who the music art is, but I'm sure you could pretty much guess. It's actually a really emotional start to the show with how Takt begins his journey, and it gets you hooked really fast. And as I mentioned before, the show has impeccable animation, so if that's something you look for in a show, you should really give Vivy and Takt a watch. I promise you won't be disappointed. However, it is worth giving a disclaimer about Takt that might dissuade some people from watching. The whole show is essentially a massive ad for a mobile game that came out earlier this year called Takt Op Symphony, and the game takes place after where the show left off, so essentially the show is left kind of open-ended on some things, and instead of just making a second season, they made a mobile game. So there's a very, very small chance that we ever see it continued in anime form because of the game. It does wrap up a decent bit of plot lines, so it's not like just a completely open-ended anime. It's just there was room to continue it, but it probably won't happen. Also, unsurprisingly, considering the show's main focus is music, it has a lot of really good songs, especially the opening, which is just titled Takt by Ryo, Supercell, Mafu Mafu, and Gaku. It is one of my favorite anime openings of all time. And another show with a banger opening is my number 3, Death Parade. The opening is called Flyers by Brodio, for anybody wondering. Death Parade is the oldest show on this list, nearly a decade old at this point, which is probably one of the reasons that it's lesser known, at least today. It was one of the more popular anime of 2015, but if you didn't catch it then, or if you just didn't watch anime like me in 2015, you probably haven't heard of it. I actually watched it because my sister, who doesn't like anime, told me she saw the first episode at a friend's house and thought it was so good that she had to find a way to watch the rest, so I figured I'd check it out, and I'm so glad I did. And astute viewers will realize that this and Takt both have a 91 on the Peach Crisp scale, so I think they're equally as good, but in my anime rankings, Death Parade is 13th and Takt is 12th. Just thought I would clear that up. For those that don't know anything about Death Parade, perfect. Skip this section, go into the show completely blind. I think that's when it's at its best. But if you want to just hear the premise, then go ahead and watch the rest of the section. If not, I'd skip it. Alright, you've been warned. Spoilers, but not massive spoilers ahead. Death Parade, unsurprisingly, is about death, and it follows Chiyuki and Decim as they welcome people into the Quindecim, which is the bar that they work at. You can probably guess from that short description that all the people who are featured are dead, and you'd be correct. Essentially, the show is about how most people go to heaven or hell, but some people end up in the Quindecim, where the Arbiters then put them through a game which ends up revealing their true selves. You see this in full display in the first episode, Death 7 Darts, and the big reveal that the couple featured had been dead the whole time was pretty hard hitting, and it stuck with me for a while, even though it's really not that hard to see coming. The show has a lot of complex ideas that are told through the characters playing symbol games like darts, bowling, pool, twister, and others, and each episode is engaging and will leave you wanting more. On top of that, the storytelling is beautiful, and I really can't emphasize just how good the show is. For my number 2, I have something that is very different from Death Parade, But it's a show that will still make you think, and it'll also get you attached to the characters for a very emotional ending, and it's called Kiznaiver. This is the least popular show on this list with only 3,000 Crunchyroll ratings. It's almost as old as Death Parade. It came out the year after it, and my brother actually found this show, and he never finished it, or he might have finished it by now, but he told me that he wasn't the biggest fan, but he thought that I might like it, so he recommended it to me, and based off what the characters look like and some of the animation I saw, and just the name Kiznaiver, I ended up watching it because it all looked really cool. For those wondering, Kiznaiver essentially means a bond from wounds. The basic premise of Kiznaiver is that 7 high schoolers are all connected through a wound that is given to them as a part of a quote-unquote experiment. The wound makes it to where if one of them experiences pain, they all share the pain. The main character, Katsuhiro Akata, has some form of congenital analgesia, which makes it to where he doesn't feel pain. I won't get too in-depth on the other characters or even into Katsuhiro himself, but I am a pretty big fan of most of them throughout the show, even though I think there are some questionable decisions, but nothing that is bad overall. I will say my favorite character is definitely Hajime Tenga. I don't think he is as well fleshed out as some of the other characters, but he is a lot of fun to watch and has some incredible moments. One of the things that was really interesting to me about Kiznaiver was the show's takes on emotional pain. Some of my favorite moments from the show deal with emotions, and those scenes are so good. You just have to watch Kiznaiver to see what they are, because there's no way that I'm going to spoil them. Yeah, so Kiznaiver is really weird, but it's extremely fun with a great story to tell. It might be my lowest rated on this list with a Teacher's Crisp score of 83, but I still love it, and honestly writing on this and going back to do some more research about the show, it really makes you want to watch it again, which is what I'm currently doing with my number 1 pick, Id Invaded. I've been wanting to rewatch a lot of anime recently, and this was one of the first ones that I went to, mainly because I've been trying to get the very cool Caleb Griffin, founder of Next Topic Media and co-host of Caleb AM, to watch it, because he's a fan of crime shows, and also like me, he's a psychology major, and this show is all about the mind of criminals, so it just made a lot of sense to get him to watch it. Much like Kiznaiver, I don't see anyone talking about it online, which is crazy because it's so cool. It's such an interesting concept. I haven't seen anything quite like it. And there's so many small details that I picked up on my rewatch that have really made a rewatch beneficial, because I think the story is kind of confusing, and I think most people would probably benefit from watching it through a second time just to pick up on some smaller details that they might not have noticed. Just to give a little bit about the show, it has 2 different storylines that it follows, one of them being a somewhat straightforward cop-style plot where we watch Hondomachi and Matsuoka solve various crimes that are all seemingly connected. The other storyline is focused on Akihito Narihisugo, also known as Sakaido, who is a brilliant detective. The storylines do intersect regularly, but there are very big differences in the feel of the scenes depending on who it's focused on. One reason that Sakaido is known as a brilliant detective is because of his ability to go in the id wells, which are somewhat like a very real VR world where the person is diving into the mind or id of the criminal. It's how they solve crimes by solving a crime in the id well that is related to the mindset of the criminal. It's one of the coolest premises I've ever seen, but I'm probably a little bit biased since I am a psych major. And for those who aren't psych majors, the id part of your brain is where most of your impulsive or instinctive parts of your personality come from, and knowing that will probably help you understand the premise a little bit better. Much like Death Parade, I think that this show is a lot better if you just go in blind, so I'm not going to talk about the plot anymore, but I do want to mention that the main character, Sakaido, is really well written. He's a lot of fun to watch. He has a really cool backstory, and there are a lot of twists that are centered around him, and it's fun just kind of to test your brain and see if you can pick up on the small details. And then on top of that, the animation and art style is really good. One thing that I really loved about Id Invaded is something that honestly surprised me, and it was the music. I mentioned the music from Vivy and Takt and just how good that music was, but it kind of makes sense because those shows are focused on music to a certain degree. But this show is just a crime show, but there are a bunch of really cool moments that are just made way cooler by the awesome music. Miyavi has some really good songs in it. My personal favorites are Butterfly and Samurai 45. They are just so hype, and the scenes they are in are made so much cooler from the songs. If you have any interest at all in crime, psychology, or just a good mystery with some pretty cool twists, then you need to check out It Invaded. It's a really fun watch, and also there's a manga series for It Invaded, and it's only 3 volumes long, and it doesn't follow the same story as the show, so if you're interested, check that out. And that's the list. I hope that y'all enjoyed this video. It was the first video that I've tried to just edit completely by myself. So I had a lot of fun making it. I really enjoyed getting to go back and learn more about these shows that I like so much, and I honestly really just want to go back and rewatch all of them. So I think I'm going to do that. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, if there's a show that's smaller that wasn't on here, I probably haven't seen it, so just drop it in the comments and I will add it to my watch list. There are definitely more underrated anime, so I could potentially make a part 2 one day. But thank y'all for sticking around. I hope at least one of these anime stuck out to you enough that you'll want to go and watch it. If you stayed this long, drop your favorite anime in the comments, and I'll respond with if I've seen it, and if I have seen it, what I gave it on the Peach Crisp score. And if you liked the video, just drop a like and subscribe. Thank y'all for watching.